Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Chen. He is the co-founder and head of digital at LinkedInpedia. John, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm excited to chat with you today, John. We're going to be talking about LinkedIn. It is something you have some deep expertise in, so I'm excited to dive in. Tell us a little bit about LinkedInpedia and what you and your team are up to over there.
Well, team at LinkedInpedia, it's really simple. We're on a mission to help people kind of brand themselves professionally in a personal way. We believe that, the rules of the game has totally changed. It's no longer a game where, people dump their resumes on LinkedIn and try to make a name for themselves through some sort of like miracle or some sort of like a search engine algorithm. So we believe that, by sharing a story and being authentic, I think that's the key word, being authentic and social selling yourself through the right kind of content.
Yeah.
That's the way forward on LinkedIn. So we're on a mission to change that. Yeah.
I love it. And you've been on my radar the last few months. I've been seeing your content pop up in my feed all the time. And as we were talking offline, this idea of there are the LinkedIn naysayers that are, these people are, they're just telling stories and they're spacing their updates, to where it's one sentence paragraphs, and all they're doing is hacking LinkedIn to show up in my news feed. But then you've got the other side of the coin that's saying, hey, we're naturally, people are drawn to stories. So we're just doing what people want in a platform where it's focused on business, and we're capitalizing on that to grow our own businesses. Where do you stand on that? Obviously, you're writing content on a I think it's a daily basis, from what I can tell, on LinkedIn. How are you thinking about storytelling on LinkedIn? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great point that you pointed out, especially with the one paragraph sentences on LinkedIn. I think just because you're posting one sentence paragraphs on LinkedIn, suddenly all of a sudden you get the so-called lots of hits in terms of impressions, likes, comments, shares. Well, it's easy to kind of just be pointed to the fact that, maybe the algorithm is kind of biased towards people who write in one sentence paragraphs. Maybe it's to kind of make people think that, he's just trying to get my attention and, just trying to get more hits. But I think on the other hand, on the other side of the story, you have people who are genuinely trying to share their story. But at the same time, let's not forget that the audience on LinkedIn are professional people. They are people who don't really have that much time. Now, that being said, I think I'm probably the best person to speak about this because I've had so many people coming to me with mixed opinions. There's the one side of them who appreciates good writing that's well-spaced, well-paragraphed. It could be three lines every chunk. By chunk, I mean, you enter 3 lines of text and then you press enter twice and then into a new paragraph, right?
Yep.
And then there's the other side who think, John is just, writing different paragraphs, short sentences because he wants us to carry on reading and in the end give him engagement whatsoever. But here's the thing. Engagement and impression are totally two different things.
Okay.
Right. I could get you to click on my post because, I probably break it up in one-liner. So you have to click on, read more to kind of see what the post is about.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, if that particular post gets like a ton of likes, comments, and shares, it's normally not even, in my personal opinion, it's not even related to the fact that it's, spaced well. If a content works on LinkedIn, it's because there's a powerful story behind it and not necessarily because it's well spaced. Spacing is part of the story. And in fact, I did like a simple text post on this topic, I spoke about, how at the end of the day, the spacing is very closely related to the story that you're trying to tell. I mean, all kinds of outlets do it. Like what you said, we've been using spacing from all kinds of mediums, all kinds of media. Even newspapers do it. I don't expect to flip over open a newspaper and I see all the text just jumble up together in one entire chunk. I can't read.
Yeah.
So I think there's like a misconception there between like good storytelling and people who are just supposedly trying to growth hack.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the people that are just trying to growth hack the platform, and I've been seeing it too, when your content's not good, your content's not good. and
Exactly.
and if your content's not adding value to people, you can space your content, as much as you want. And you can have, the most clickbaity opening sentence. But if the value that you're trying to deliver in that piece of content is not good, it's not ultimately going to get engagement. But when you understand kind of the art of, great copywriting, you understand that the first one or two sentences have to hook in the reader, because if what you have to say is good and it actually adds value, you want people to consume that, you've got to get them there. And having a hook in your opening line, spacing out your paragraphs, because we know that most people are reading it on mobile and they have to be able to consume it easily. If they see a giant block of text, they're just going to tune out. And it's funny, I've had some haters jump into posts of mine and say, "Oh, like I hate this one sentence paragraph stuff. I'm a true writer," and da 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 da. And I go back to their profile, and it's hilarious because I look at the content that they're putting out, and of course, it's 3-4 sentence paragraphs, and it gets no engagement. And some of it's because honestly, the content's not that good. And then other parts of it are maybe the content is good, but they're not following those basic tenets of good copywriting. And because of that, nobody's going to receive the content that they're trying to put out there because they're romantic about it, feeling like, well, we have to follow the rules of the game, so to speak. And it's like, I don't know where that rule book is, but I'm not following it. I'm doing stuff that's actually getting results. How do you think about, John, the stories that you're telling? Because you tell some really compelling stories, and they always tie back to some kind of fundamental business lesson. You're delivering real value in the content that you're putting out. What's your process for kind of marrying stories with kind of value?
I think, before I answer that, it's a great point. Personally, as a copywriter, inside my brain, I'm probably screaming, "Hell yeah!" Because you can't just point the finger at people who supposedly kind of say. You mentioned that people who come to you and say, "Oh, I hate these one-liner texts or paragraphs on LinkedIn," and then we go back to the profiles and we see that, hey, these guys are not doing copywriting the way it should be. And I like to just link it to the basic tenet of copywriting, or even basic marketing, right? Which is AIDA, right? You know AIDA.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Attention,
the first one
interest.
is always exactly attention, interest, desire, and action. Well, if you jumble everything up, I always compare it to being like watching a movie. Imagine you sat down in a movie and he tells you the ending at the very beginning. You'll be wondering like, okay, so what am I paying for?
Yep.
There's no plot, there's no pacing, there's no suspense, there's no tensity in the action. The viewer doesn't feel anything at all. So to kind of like put that matter to rest, or at the very least kind of put this, my opinion, across, is that my personal take is that spacing and the whole one-liner thing, my personal approach to it was always, and in fact I applied this to all my writing, right? Unless my clients I do some content writing on the side, unless my client specifically says that, hey, we want all the text jumbled up, which I will strongly rebel against.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But in the end, it usually fails. Unless they specifically ask for that, I always make it a point to make it easy for the reader. Because think about it, you're in a world full of information. It's so noisy out there. And you have that fortunate chance for your reader who has the attention span of a goldfish, less than a goldfish, according to Neil Patel, right? That's less than 3 seconds. You have that chance to make him like read through your post and engage with him with the post. So in that short amount of time, if you're not even gonna make the point to make it easy on the eyes, then what chance at engagement do you have? So that's my personal take on that. Now, another interesting question. Oh, I love this show, man. There's a lot of interesting questions. So your question was, how do I link these stories? What's the thought process that goes on behind it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think at the core, it's always about, broadening the mindset, because my personal journey as an entrepreneur was that I started 8 years ago. I was doing freelance writing on the side. I started a few companies along the way. I started an events company, copywriting company. So, naturally along those lines, it kind of like compiled like huge stories of failure, right? Which I'll learn later on was like stories of success. So naturally, I would always whenever I face a similar situation now, I would always think back, because chances are I learned it when I was 20, right? I'm 26 now. So that was 6 years plus the 2 additional years where I started freelance writing. So to me, it was always about, oh, hey, there's something, next to me. It could be a notebook where I had, wrote on it 3 years ago. It was like an old parchment. I look at it. Oh, hey, this reminds me of something. So how can I link this to whatever I'm doing now? And how can I take it further to make it a lesson? Because I believe that, every object around us is like something for us to use, but also something for us to learn from. Like, for example, a bicycle, right? To many people, some people might see it like just a bicycle. But to me, the more I ride the bicycle, it's weird, but it kind of feels to me that the bicycle knows me as much as I know the bicycle. And, I kind of see the wear and tear as like experience, whereas other people might see it as, just wear and tear, depreciation, and it's time to change the bicycle. Yeah. So, the entire thought process is always about, hey, there's something that, I learned. There's something that, I had the chance to learn when I was on a cab. They call it taxi in Singapore, but, I'm on a cab, I'm having food. Oh, hey, this is what I learned. This is kind of some, it's... Yeah. It's impossible to kind of put it in a process.
But I think there is some valuable takeaway there, that everything around you, when you start seeing everything around you as potential for, a story, I think it opens up the world. And when you start looking back at, past experiences, that's something that I've started doing recently, is just thinking about my childhood and different elements of my childhood and how that shaped me today. Thinking about, my early professional career and like the corporate world that I was in for a hot second. What was it about that lifestyle that I kind of wanted to retreat from, processing through that, writing about that, connecting with people in ways that I didn't even think were possible. But me talking about my dad leaving when I was 2 years old, I'd never had any idea that a story like that would touch people on the next level, right? Like I'm still getting messages from that post because I tied the fact that, my dad wasn't around when I was 2. And because of that, I had a very supportive environment around me and my mom and my grandma and my sister. And as a result of that support, I now have my default setting is to surround myself with incredibly supportive people, because my upbringing, I was very well supported. The lack of my dad almost like forced my mom and my grandma to support even more, knowing that I didn't have a male figure around. And so just talking about that connection, but to your point earlier, you can't I think there is something powerful in not just sharing stories for story's sake, but always making sure that there's that connection. Do you find with your clients, John, that making the connection is the tough part for them, or is it more trying to find the story that can then tie to a business principle that's the harder part?
Sure. I always find this to be a particular problem. The smaller the company is, I say this from the client's perspective, meaning a lot of clients, they're coming to me like, oh, hey, just yesterday, there was a client who came to me, oh, hey, John, I need you to help me sell a book. So I said, what do you want to really sell about? So I want to sell, I've been through my some struggles. Both my parents were actually murdered by my brother.
Oh, wow.
These are real stories, She actually left India at the age of, I think, 15 when she was a teenager, took a loan from the bank, came to the States. Today, she's the head of growth for a very large team. And according to her, she is in a very happy marriage. She has a husband, a loving husband, 2 kids. And she's like, how can I, reach out to people? So what we did was like kind of counterintuitive. I said, hey, look, stop trying to pitch me. You don't need to pitch me.
Yeah.
So I got in a female colleague of mine, and we kind of set up like a really fun sales call. So the idea was, that client of mine, she did a questionnaire beforehand that asked her like the typical marketing scenarios, like what's your end customer's nightmare or miracle. So instantly, while she was thinking of that, she did the questionnaire, and she immediately got the chance to pitch to my female colleague, who at this point had no idea what she was doing. Now, take note that we wasn't really trying to sell the products or services. We wasn't going into something technical. We were going towards the emotional, because one thing that a lot of people miss out, I find, especially on LinkedIn or with like most small businesses. In fact, I mean, your audience is B2B, so kind of they'll understand. And it's important to understand is people make decisions 80% based on emotions and 20% based on logic.
Yep.
The funny thing is that once they committed to buying something emotionally, even if the logical part of the brain says, hey, maybe that's not a good purchase, they're convinced themselves that it was a good purchase.
Yep.
So emotional selling is so important. And the only way, the best way that humans know how to sell emotionally is through stories. So by the end of the call, that client actually cried. I actually did a post on it this morning. So we were talking all about, how crying was a sign of strength and not weakness, and how, women ought to be empowered. So coming back to the point, I think, a lot of people don't realize that the smaller your business is, the stronger your story point is going to be. Because the bigger your organization gets, the more people join, right? Then it's going to be corporatized. It's going to be all about, what's the vision? What's the sales target? What we're trying to achieve. When you're small, your company's story and core vision and core mission is going to be pretty much tied to your personal story. And to kind of like put a rest in the matter, I'm not saying that we should create sob stories, right? It's not sob stories that we should create. Like a lot of people have this mentality that, just because we're sharing stories that get huge engagement, it's automatically, BS or something that, we came up with out of the hat or something. But like what you mentioned about losing a father, right? That was something personal to you. And it takes something within yourself to be able to kind of open up, apply it to content, much less link it to whatever that you are, that is motivating you to do something like Sweetfish Media today, right? It's like so many different layers. In storytelling, we call it layering, right? So it's not really, I would say a lot of the challenges that small businesses have is like they tend to distance themselves from the business that they're starting up. For example, like if you're starting a cupcake business, a lot of people think that, we sell the best cupcakes. No, that's a technical point. People will only know you sell the best cupcakes after they've tasted your cupcakes. But why? Again, this goes back to AIDA, right? You got to get their attention, interest, and desire. So before you actually get them to taste your cupcakes and know the technical aspect that your cupcakes are the best, they've got to be sold emotionally into it. And storytelling is the best way to do that.
I love it. No, that you're spot on. We're very aligned in our thinking around this, John. So we could talk about this for days, I think. But if there's somebody listening to this, John, they've resonated with what you've said, they want to follow along your journey, continue to see the stories that you're sharing, or they want to go learn more about LinkedInpedia and what you're up to there. What are the best ways for them to go about doing both of those things?
Well, it's very simple. You can either connect with me on LinkedIn. I think James will be kind enough to leave a link.
Yep.
If not, you can just check out LinkedInpedia. That's LinkedIn followed by an encyclopedia, the pedia behind it. So that's LinkedInpedia.com.
Love it. Wonderful, John. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I've really gotten a lot of fun with this conversation. So I think our listeners will get a lot of value out of it as well. So I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, James.
If you're a B2B marketer, we want to feature you on sites like the Huffington Post, Social Media Examiner, and Chief Marketer. Every week, we send out a question related to B2B marketing. We use the responses to those questions to fuel the content we write for really popular websites. So head over to sweetfishmedia.com/questions and sign up today.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.